Here we are at the fourth episode of GS2 governance. So hope you all have watched all the previous 3 episodes, because this would be a continuation of all the 3 previous episodes. So I would recommend you to watch the previous episodes before coming on to this episode. So before starting our lecture, I would have a small announcement. So please do have a look at all the playlists which are designed for UPSC in this channel. Actually, these are all part of our paid courses, but if the response is good here, we'll be considering putting it fully for free. So what you have to do is please subscribe and leave a feedback comment here. Also, if you are someone looking for a serious test series or a good quality test series, you can contact this number given on the screen, 7200681675. These are actually a good quality test series and many questions have come repeatedly from this. So you can refer this. So with no further delay, let's move on to the lecture. So the topic we'll be dealing today is continuation of the previous lecture. In the previous lecture, we have completed issues arising out of the design and implementation of various government interventions. There we have dealt part 1, in which we have dealt about education sector, health sector. So in this part, we'll be dealing with other sectors. Here, we'll be dealing with gender sector and agriculture sector. Apart from that, we'll be dealing with other common sectors like defense, then space, etc. So the government interventions, it can be in any sectors. So what we'll be doing is, we'll be dealing some critical sectors in detail, and other sectors you have to add, because it is not practical to cover each and every sector. So first we are moving on to issues in gender sector policies. What are the issues arising out of the gender sector policies designed by government so far? So the first problem is inequalities in educational opportunities. So here we are linking education part also within the gender sector. So this is like a smart kind of work and smart way of answer writing. So we can see that even though female literacy in rural areas, it increased, that is, it increased from 46% to 58%. Yes, that is possibly a good move. That is obviously a good move, but the problem is that rural women, they still face inequalities. They are not having enough educational opportunities. Why? What is the reason? Because of socio-cultural barriers, because of patriarchy, because of lack of access. Due to these things, the rural mobility has been very low, and this impacted rural women. So in census 2011, it was revealed that although this female literacy increased, there are still inequalities which is being faced by rural women. So that is one problem. Then next is the failure of state to correct the regional disparity. See, regional disparity has been an age-old problem in India, and India haven't been able to correct it so far. That is the Gini coefficient, that is the matrix of inequality, that remains very bad in India. That is like in a worse condition in India. So government is in a state of failure to correct these inequalities. So there are regional disparities across various parts of India, and rural mobility is also very low. Why? In NCERT survey, it was revealed that only 23% out of the rural areas, the primary teachers of rural areas, it had only 23% as women. But in urban areas, it was 60%. This is like a huge difference. So there is this low levels of rural mobility which is being not correctly addressed by the government. Then next is this lack of coherence between complementary policies. See, what this means is that on one side, government is trying to increase the gross enrollment ratio among girls, both in higher education, in schools, in primary, secondary, all the levels. Government is making efforts through Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, then through fellowship schemes, etc. Government is making efforts. Yeah, that is true. But on the other side, what is happening? Dropout rates are also increasing. So that is like a neutral kind of thing. See, in one side, government is doing positive. In the other side, for the same thing, they are doing negative. They are not directly doing, but the negative is coming. So in this way, the positive and negative is getting affected, and the result is becoming very low. So this is lack of coherence in government policies. So to correct these policy coherence problems, the government policies need to be coherent. That means many ministries, they have to coordinate and work together. Only then this problem can be fixed. So this is another problem in government policy. issue is the lower rate of vaccination for women. See, already in health sector, women are facing huge rate of inequalities with regard to their male counterparts. So this happens with respect to vaccination also. See, with respect to women, we can see MMR is there, then IMR is there, anemia is there. All those kinds of health problems are inflicting upon women. Apart from that, in COVID times, we have seen that there is a lower rollout of vaccination for women. So, we are addressing the gender policy with respect to women in a health angle. Then, India, the malnutrition problem in India, it is highest among developing countries. It is actually worse among many of our South Asian neighbors even. So, why this happens? Why this can be quoted as a problem in policy making? Because despite of having many schemes like Poshan Abhiyan is there, midday meal scheme is there, etc. is there, and many other schemes are also there for addressing nutrition, poverty, etc. Despite of that, we are having high levels of malnutrition. This means that there are implementation flaws in government policies. Then, lack of specific policies. See, this point means that one size fits all approach. This is an approach which has been chosen by government so far. This means that India, being a diverse country, they are being diverse in their needs. So, many sections of India needs many needs, and many sections of India demands various schemes as per their needs. But the government policies, it is like a common kind of thing. It is becoming centralized. So, in place of the centralized policies, what we need is decentralized policies. Only then the local problems can be targeted precisely, and local problems can be given local and precise solutions. So, one size fits approach is not going to work for a diverse country like India. So, what it meant is that it failed to address the concerns of marginalized sections. See, marginalized sections, we mean in gender, we are having this LGBTQ community, then women community, etc. So, these all genders are vulnerable, no? They are marginalized. So, one size fits approach will not work for all these genders in general. Then, the legal sanction opposed for the same-sex couple to marry. So, the failure of state, this is revealing the failure of state in incorporating the liberal ideas into governance. See, on one part, the Supreme Court or the judiciary took a step in decriminalizing section 377. On the other part, government is opposing the same-sex couple marriages. See, this is directly inflicting the Article 21 or the right to live with dignity, or it is impacting the individual autonomy. So, liberal ideas are not being incorporated into governance. So, this is a policy problem. So, it also impacts the creation of an inclusive state. Then, next is this LGBTQ community protest happening all over the India because there was flaws in Transgender Protection of Rights Act. This act was actually meant for the welfare of LGBTQ community, but LGBTQ community was not satisfied with the provisions of this act. An example was there was lack of adequate reservation provisions in this act. So, this community itself is protecting because they are not finding anything good for them in this act which was specifically designed for them. Okay. So, here next is we can quote a flowchart kind of thing. How you can use this is whenever some question comes with regard to the issues in government policy and interventions, you can use this flowchart to write it as an example. By using this flowchart, you can just explain an example or explain a policy kind of thing like policy maintenance and succession or termination. After that comes agenda setting, then policy has to be formulated, then it has to be legitimization, it has to go through the legitimization process, then it has to get implemented, it has to get timely evaluated, then after getting evaluated, the good results have to be maintained. So, this cycle goes as a virtuous cycle. So, if this approach is followed in governance, then we can resolve issues in the policy to some extent. So, now we are going to look upon some specific example in gender policies to quote as an example. So, first is this Maternity Benefit Act. See, this Maternity Benefit Act, it was actually intended to improve the working conditions for women. See, women they are not able to go out for work because of safety problems or because of this patriarchy problems. So, government has took a good step in implementing this Maternity Benefit Act. So, they have incorporated like this 26 weeks of paid maternity leave. But it had a opposite effect on the welfare of this women section, because what it did was, it was discouraging employers to hire women employees. So they are profit oriented, these employers are profit oriented. So with 26 weeks of paid maternity leave, the employers will be preferring only to choose male employees in the place of women employees, because if they are choosing like that, they wouldn't have to give a paid maternity leave kind of thing. So this, although intended to improve the working conditions, actually inflicted upon women a serious hazard. Then next issues with regard to the credit taxes of women. See, this point I am telling it with respect to the agriculture sector and women. In agriculture sector, what are the problems faced by women? See, taking the agriculture sector, we are having only 14% women farmers who are having land holdings. So this much poor is the percentage of women who are having land holdings. So how this is impacting the credit taxes? Because land holdings, it has to be given as a collateral for accessing the credit. So without land holdings, women farmers, they are not getting adequate collateral to be bargained for getting adequate credit. If they are not getting adequate credit, then the agricultural investment they are making is getting very low, and this in a way is affecting their mobility. So this is like a vicious cycle. Then powerlessness in politics. What this means is that even though we are having many women leaders now, they are like proxy leaders of their patriarchal husbands or patriarchal fathers or patriarchal owners in particular. So they are working as a proxy kind of thing. They are not having real power. They are like involved only in the behind the scene discussion, and they are not having direct confrontation in the floor. Direct confrontation, it means that they are not having the real voice in political platforms kind of thing. They are always meant to talk for someone, or they are always at the authority of someone. So this is the phrase powerlessness in politics. Then next is regarding the reproductive rights of women. Here India has been focusing more upon the population control and in general rather than enhancing the individual autonomy. See, there is something called individual autonomy in reproductive rights. So everyone has the right to choose their autonomy over their body. So that is not being embraced upon. Rather, population control in general is being embraced. So if we have to enhance this individual autonomy, then we have to take steps in removing the structural barriers to reproductive health services. This means that the access to contraceptives and the awareness on the contraceptive devices, it has to be enhanced. Only then we can enhance the individual autonomy in this reproductive rights. So the policy focus should shift from population control to these kind of things also. Then next is suggestions. What all things more can be taken by the government to resolve this issue? So here we can quote some statistics kind of thing, like India, it is having the potential to increase its GDP up to 60%. So within 2025 or within 5 years, 5 or 4 years, we have the potential to increase our GDP to 60%. How? We have to increase the workforce participation rate of women. So this is like an unutilized potential in our country. India is a developing country and India needs workforce to contribute more to its GDP. So we are actually paralyzing this workforce available in our country. So India has to take steps to do that. In this way, India can get the benefits of increasing its GDP, increasing the development, and also enhancing the mobility of this women. Then more stringent legislations and enforcement. It is needed to cover the wage gap. See, still now women, they are paid 34% less than men. Although this sounds only less, when coming to the wage or real terms, this 34% is big, because India is a poverty stricken country. So already the wage rates are very low, and added to that, women are getting 34% less. So this makes significance. So even though we are having this Equal Wages Act etc. in place, the reality is this thing. So this is a kind of policy flow which government must resolve. Then what the government can do other is diversification of jobs. So India is a farm based economy, no? India is an agri based economy. So what India can do is it can realize the potential in other sectors also. Food processing sector is there, then marine sector is there, then MSME sector is there. So in all these sectors, India has the potential to create non-farm jobs. So non-farm job creation should be the focus of government policies in the upcoming policies. So this is a good step. Then need for legal safeguards. How to ensure the right of women to decide upon family planning. So women should be given this right to decide upon family planning, like how many children she wants and at what age she wants to conceive. Such kind of things and individual autonomy kind of things should be given legal safeguards so that these women are not getting exploited. Then creches can be opened in towns by local bodies. Why? It relieves women from motherhood penalty. See, by motherhood penalty, what we mean is that when a woman becomes pregnant or when a woman is going to maternity kind of state, she has to leave the job because she has to take the double burden kind of thing of managing both the employment and household chores, and there are many socio-cultural barriers also. So this comes in as a motherhood penalty. Due to motherhood only, she is having the penalty in her employment. So how this can be resolved is creches can be opened so that women can handle the kids in parallel with having the employment also. So this is a step that can be taken by the local bodies. Then what are the steps so far in right direction? What are the steps taken so far by government which is having the positive spillover effect in the state or society? So POCSO Act, you all know, it is dealing with sexual harassment of children. So it is setting an example because it is the first gender neutral laws in all across the world. It is one of the first gender neutral laws. This means that it is taking into consideration not only girl children but also all the children. It is taking into consideration sexual harassment. It is dealing with sexual harassment. Then India, it is one of the first countries to legislate on abortion and legalize conditional abortion. So this is also a promising or appreciable kind of move by a developing country like India. Then this SIDBI has been in the mission of ensuring the financial stability to women or financial support to women. Many schemes have come so far, like Mahila Udyam Nidhi and Mahila Vikas Nidhi. These are like offering financial support to women entrepreneurs. So this is also kind of rural mobility. Then we have this Nirbhaya Fund. Under Nirbhaya Fund, government has taken some positive steps like to make 8 major Indian cities safer for women. How? To improve the forensic capabilities in case of sexual assault. See, we can see many Indian cities, they are vulnerable to sexual abuse or they are becoming increasingly unsafe for women like Delhi, Kolkata, etc. So in these major cities which are becoming unsafe for women, government is taking steps to make it more safer so that women can travel with ease, and they are improving the forensic capabilities so the culprits can be handled with more stringency. Then workplace in India, considering the workplace in India, workforce in India, every 4th worker is a woman in India. So this is also a positive note. Then in Panchayat elected representatives, in all over India, Panchayat elected representatives, 46% is women only. This is also a positive note. Then as I have said earlier, Supreme Court, it legalized the homosexuality. So it is incorporating liberal ideas into the governance, and it declared the section 377 as unconstitutional and decriminalized homosexuality. Let's move on to issues in agriculture sector policies. So first issue is the weak network of APMC. See, India is a diverse country, as I've said earlier. So there should be a good network of APMC so that farmers can access and farmers can sell their produce. So due to the meager amount of APMC here and there, and it is fragmented also, so there is this forced selling of produce at the farm gate. See, already Indian farmers, they are small landholders. So with this small land holding, the agriculture produce they are producing also will be less only. If they have to take separate transport for this small land holding and small produce, then it is not going to be profitable for them. So there is this forced selling of produce right at the farm gate itself. So there is improper price discovery for farmers. That is why we are having many farmer suicide, debt problems, etc. in India. So this is due to weak network of APMC. Then there is this weak integration of farmers with modern technology. This means the modern technology like Happy Seeder. Happy Seeder, it is a device which has the potential to curtail stubble burning. In Punjab and other parts of India, stubble burning is an environmental problem, and it is also an agriculture problem. And other modern technology like high yielding variety of seeds, etc. So these farmers, they are having less access to this modern kind of technologies, and it also majorly affects the rural areas in particular. So this is another problem. Then poor employment policies. See, the laborers section within agriculture, 55% of the agri sector workers is comprising of the laborers or the low level laborers. They are like low level wage earners. So the employment policies having been inclined to them or having been favorable to them to get minimal policy support or incentives, even that is not being in place. So these laborers are like a neglected sector. Then pro-rich inclined policies. What this means is like fertilizers, seed kit, land development assistance. Such kinds of government initiatives, they are like pro-rich, or they are favoring big farmers, and the small farmers, then tenants, sharecroppers, etc. They are not being targeted. All these facilities are directed at pro-rich farmers. This is another kind of problem. Then you can quote this agriculture problems with respect to rural economy, why it matters. So what you can do is you can just pause it and make notes out of this. Now another issues taking the angle of FCI. See, there is this poor resource allocation and distribution. See, the public distribution system or PDS system of India, it works by a network kind of thing. From FCI, there is procurement to state governments, etc. So in FCI itself, there is huge wastage of procurement. Already India is having nutrition issues and food wastage. So apart from this wastage is also happening. So there is this improper resource allocation of food grains being done and improper distribution also. So there is wastage of procurement. Then lack of climate resilient agricultural policies is there. So to bring in climate resilient agriculture policies, government should take the first step. Only then it can have a positive spillover effect. What happens in case of India is that still India is over dependent on monsoon rains. So there is this lack of focus on proper irrigation. Although irrigation is in place, the irrigation hasn't been scientific. So we are having this salinity problems in our soils also. This is reducing our productivity of soils also. So India has to devise adequate measures so as to bring in climate resilient agricultural policies. In this note, India has taken some steps, but it is getting implementation flows like zero budget natural farming, Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana. All these steps are directed at climate resilience in agriculture, but this has to get implemented in a good way. Then this non-equitable rates for various crops. See, pulses and oil seeds we are having now. These pulses and oil seeds, these are like actually taking in less inputs and it is giving more benefits. How? It is having less water usage, and it also does an additional job of soil enrichment by nitrogen fixation, this leguminous crops. But it is not being supported by adequate procurement. Always rice and wheat are getting the policy support from government, and these pulses and oil seeds, they are like a neglected crop sector. So what government can do is the advantage given by pulses and oil seeds, both in terms of climate and in terms of the nutrition, government has to take steps to support these crops also. Then what you can include is a case study comparison. In India, subsidies on power, it is having water wastage. Okay, so in India is acting like a net exporter of water. How it is acting as a net exporter of water? Because it is exporting more of cotton, sugar, soybean and other crops. See, these crops are water intensive crops. So India is actually getting exploited because we are taking in more water to grow these crops and we are exporting it. Whereas in case of China is having net importer of water. China is doing a smart work by importing those crops and saving its water. So this is like a case study which you can quote. You can give specific examples to explain problems in agricultural policies. So first example is, you can quote this minimum support price. There are serious problems in minimum support price policies being implemented by the government. How this happens is that there is selective procurement. That means the government is focusing more on some 23 crops. Within this 23 crops, wheat and rice are getting more focus. So there is a negative spillover. Why? Because there is a demand crunch and unscientific agricultural practices. Like when wheat and rice are getting high demand, then there is this cultivation of wheat and rice taking on a greater scale. See, this wheat and rice, it requires more amount of water and it is not doing any soil fertility enhancing job also. So there is this unscientific agricultural practices and lack of inclusive development in agriculture. The point we have discussed earlier, like pulses and oil seeds, they are getting phased out. So this should not happen. So this MSP and other policies should be inclined at the scientific development of agriculture. Then another problem is lack in upgrading MSP rates. Although MSP is in place, the MSP has to be upgraded in a scientific manner. So, because the production rates, inflation, all these things should be taken into consideration, and based on that the rates must be devised and revised. Then non-competitive prices. See, due to non-competitive prices, India's market is getting uncompetitive, and it is lowering the export potential of India. India is having a huge export potential both in terms of agricultural produce and marine produce, but India's exports are not competitive at the global scale. So there is stagnant agricultural value addition being done. Then next point is with regard to agricultural marketing. In agricultural marketing, we are having this middleman profiteering. So this is affecting the small farmers in particular. These middlemen are bagging all the profits out of this farmers, and the farmers are going to farmer suicides and debt and all those kinds of things. So government must take steps to resolve this issue also. Then next example would be with regard to soil health card scheme. See, soil health card scheme, it is a good scheme because it is educating farmers about the nutrient information. So it is focusing upon an overall development. It is like a climate based policy also. It is enhancing the soil health. But what is the thing? The framework, or when a scheme is devised, there should be adequate framework to work upon. The soil health card scheme, it can only work only if there is soil testing labs. Only then we can know the nutrient information about soil. But soil testing labs are itself not in place. Then how can this scheme work effectively? So this is one kind of problem. Then next is this disproportionate effects of green revolution. See, India is a victim, I should say India is a victim of green revolution, because green revolution actually increased the productivity, but it has done harms also to Indian agricultural sector. It has made the Indian agricultural sector cereal centric, regionally biased and resource intensive. Due to this resource intensive only, we are facing water shortage, groundwater pollution, fertilizer overusage. Then regional bias, like the green revolution belt we are having, North Indian belt, Punjab and Haryana, all those parts of India, and other parts of India, it is getting low benefits out of green revolution. Then it has made cereal centric, so that we have phased out millets, one of the most nutritious foods which India can afford, as is being phased out due to the effect of green revolution. So this is like a policy problem. Then Here you can quote some examples and problems with regard to food insecurity of India. This also you can pause and make notes out of this. Now moving on to the suggestions. What all can be done to improve agricultural policies and its effects? So we need consistent policies in place of stagnant policies. That means dependency on private sector. It can be balanced by introducing more triple P projects. See, government, it can't do a solo job of managing the huge agricultural sector of India. So what it can do is it can act like a regulator, and it can rope in the support of private sector for getting adequate investment, and it can create creative triple P projects also, and it can increase the gross capital formation in agriculture. See, recently gross capital formation in agriculture, it has fallen due to falling private sector investment. So this is like depending upon the private sector. If private sector investment is falling, then India's agriculture is going into vain. So this shouldn't be the case. So government should rope in adequate triple P projects. Then redefining subsidy policies is another solution, because it can have a positive spillover to other sectors also. If you are redefining subsidy policies, see, subsidy should be targeted. Whatever subsidy is given to one sector, it should go to that sector only. In reality, what we are having is we are channelizing the subsidy meant for agriculture sector into other sectors like food processing sector. This won't work. So this need to be corrected. Then Indian Council of Research on International Economic Relations. This is a data point. So this organization, it has quoted that there is a failure of policies. Why? Because due to regressive marketing policies in India and poor cold chain infrastructure. Cold chain infrastructure, it is a major problem in India. This actually affects dairy products and other marine products. So due to these regressive marketing policies and cold chain infrastructure, Indian policies are going into failure. This is a data point which you can quote. Then another thing what can be done is cooperative farming. In cooperative farming, why it is suitable for India? Because India, as I have already said, Indian farmers, they are having smaller land holdings. So if you are able to club in all those smaller land holding into a bigger one, then we can reap more benefits out of it, and we can make agriculture a profitable business. So it can resolve the fragmented land holding issues, and it also adds on to risk sharing by the farmers. Okay, now what are the steps in right direction? What are the good steps taken so far? So this Model Agriculture Land Leasing Act, this is like a model act framed by central government, and many state governments, they can accept it as per their need. So this is like a good move, because it is recognizing the rights of tenants and interest of landowners. So this is not a pro-rich or pro-poor policy. It is like incorporating the needs of both the sides, tenants and landowners. Then next is this Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana. See, this is actually dealing with a decentralized kind of governance in agriculture, and it is making competitive and cooperative federalism. So here what we are doing is, center is incentivizing the states to increase the investment in agriculture. So this is like a competitive federalism. So many states, they can devise their own policies. Then focus on nutri cereals. We are having this millets mission, no? National Millets Mission we are having. So this is a good move. So nutri cereals, they are a powerhouse of nutrients. This can actually solve the malnutrition problems in India, and millet cultivation is also suitable for India because it doesn't require that much water, or it is not a water intensive crop. So this can enhance food and nutrition security. Then measures to double the farmers' income. This also is a good step, and government is focusing upon solar power, all those additional income methods for farmers. Then Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. This is dealing with scientific irrigation, drip and sprinkler irrigation, so that we can save the scarce water resources. Then government policies for allied sector development is also being done. Here what government is doing is, it is focusing upon the diversification of agricultural supply and demand chain. Both supply and demand chain, government is focusing to diversify. So we are having this project Chaman with regard to horticulture sector. Then Agri Udan, it is regard to the transport sector, wherein the cold chain infrastructure etc. are being focused upon. Then Sampada, it is dealing with marine sector. Then this ENAM, it is the National Agricultural Market. So here government is seeking the integration of ICT technology into the agricultural sectors. So these are all positive notes or positive steps taken by government to reform the agricultural sectors. Now, so far we have dealt about the problems or issues in the policies regarding agriculture sector, employment sector, then regarding gender sector, etc. So other sectors are also there in place in India. So what are the problems in other sectors? Here I am giving an example as to the challenges to external security of India. This also, why I am giving this example is like you have to devise your own methods and you have to focus and explore upon more sectors, and you have to target the issues particular to that sectors. So here you can just pause and take a look at what are the challenges pertaining to external security of India. Then issues in other sector policies. What are the issues taking in other sector policies? So first we can look at the problems in space sector. What are the issues plaguing the space sector? So till now we haven't passed this draft space activities bill. So there is this absence of clear legislative framework. In the absence of a clear legislative framework, the space governance have become so much difficult, and there is no dispute settlement mechanism also. This also puts a shock on the space sector of India. So this is discouraging private investment also. Why? Because if there is no legal safeguards or if there is no legal provisions in place, the private investment or private sector players, they won't be interested to join this sector. So this is a important step or urgent step needed to be taken by government so as to improve its space sector. Then another classic example is regarding to economic sector. Here demonetization, actually it was intended to eliminate the terror funding and black money, corruption kind of thing. But there were many implementation flows. We have seen in many newspapers the long queues before ATMs and the economic crisis, which actually impacted the migrant workers and the poor laborers, and the poor sections of society was more inflicted by this move. And next is issues in disaster management framework. So India's disaster management framework, it has always been focusing upon the post disaster care. It has been less focusing upon the prevention of disasters. On the other place, China has announced carbon neutrality by 2060 and Japan and South Korea by 2050, whereas India, despite of having many climate policies in place, is yet to announce a target. So this is like a policy fault. What you can do is you can quote some case study kind of things to boost your answer. If you are quoting case studies or comparison studies, then best practices from other countries, see, these kind of things will be serving as a mark booster for your answer writing. So here we are taking a case study in 2012. Okay, it is from 2012, and in 2012 the government had actually recommended against the construction of dams in Alagananda Bhagirathi Basin. This Alagananda Bhagirathi Basin, you know, it is lying in the Himalayan region. The Himalayan region, it is an environmentally fragile region or environmentally active region. So the dam construction won't work here. That means the heavy dams and all those things. But against the recommendation, the authorities went into the construction, and they also constructed the dams in the periglacial zone. So the consequences of this construction, we are facing it now also. Till today we are having many flash floods, the recent flash floods we are having there. Then the climatic pattern changes, the rainfall patterns, etc. got affected. So these are the consequences of the flaws in government policies. Now let's move on to the practice question for the day. The cooperative sector's immense transformative power has not been optimally realized so far. So in the light of this statement, suggest measures to fully realize the sector's potential. What you can do is you can write a model answer for this question, and in the subsequent class I will be giving a template answer for this. So try writing it. Thank you. Let's move on to the practice question which was given in the last episode. So the question was, implementation of ICT based projects suffers in terms of certain vital factors. Identify these factors and suggest measures for effective implementation. This was the question. So a favorable introduction would be of 3 to 4 lines. How can we give an introduction? Rather than a standalone sector, ICT has become the value booster of all other sectors to improve the dimensions of good governance like efficiency and equity. So, here we are bringing in 2 or 3 keywords. So, good governance is a keyword, efficiency, equity, all these are keywords. So, here in the introduction itself, we are stressing upon the importance of ICT sector for the governance. ICT sector, it is like a backbone of all the other sectors. And if you are integrating ICT sector, the value and the efficiency of the public service delivery can be improved very much. Then moving on to the body part. In the body part, the question asked for factors which are affecting the implementation of ICT projects. So, which are the factors hindering the ICT projects? Here we are writing in a point like format. So, first point would be lack of framework and infrastructure. See, what this means is that whenever government is trying to bring in new ICT projects into picture, the enabling infrastructure is still lagging. What is the enabling infrastructure? Enabling infrastructure means we are not having adequate data protection. So, these initiatives like digital health ID, then Aadhaar linking, etc. requires the critical information of the public. So, when dealing with critical information of the public, the state has to ensure the protection of those data. But that is not in place, and the Parliament has not yet passed the data protection bill. So, this is like a lack of framework. Then next point would be the poor network and quality of common service centers. See, common service centers, it was a landmark legislation or landmark step by the government to deliver the public service in remote areas, and this actually serves as a weapon for the digitally illiterate population to access their services in digital mode. But the problem with regard to this common service center is that the weak network. We are not having enough common service centers in India, and even if we are having that, we are not ensuring the quality of those common service center. Mostly there will be red tapeism, and mostly there will be lack of trained professionals, etc. in these common service centers. And 90% of digitally illiterate population, okay, they are in India. The digitally illiterate population is huge in India. So, due to this digitally illiterate population, who is needed? Middlemen is needed. So, this has actually contributed to the creation of digital middlemen and red tapeism. All those problems which were traditional, red tapeism and middleman problem, this is traditional. So, when digital techniques come in, these middlemen and red tapeism also went into digital mode. That is the only difference we are seeing here. So, that is the second point. Then third point is accessibility barriers are there. Why accessibility barriers are there? Because languages, the English and Hindi languages are mainly focused upon all these programs, and even if English and Hindi are used, the languages and the procedures given are very complex for the common people to understand, and added to that, there is an exclusion of regional languages. The government is working on it to include regional languages also into this, but as of now there is exclusion of regional languages. So, this acts as an accessibility barrier. Then next issue is last mile connectivity. By last mile connectivity, what we mean is that there is weak internet coverage. See, BharatNet, all those projects are in place, but to ensure digital services to the remote and rural parts of India, we still need to increase our internet coverage. This is a prime requisite. Then here example can be quoted as northeast regions, then other remote parts of the India, they are not getting adequate connectivity. Then moving on to the suggestions part. What can be good suggestions? So, whenever the government is designing ICT solutions, it has to be designed in lines with citizen friendly, simplified and assistive manner. So, there should be some helpline numbers in regional languages also, and this can be made as a 24-hour format, so that if ever some doubt comes in for a person, the person can access the helpline numbers and solve his or her issue. Then next thing is building digital trust. See, this digital trust is a very important thing in digital services. So, whenever we are having, when the public is having trust in digital field, then only they can access those services, or they can opt for that services. So the response of the government becomes important here to cyber crimes, etc. Then what this requires is, this also requires easing the socio-cultural fear. See, here we are having the socio-cultural fear of people will be thinking like, oh, digital banking, etc. is very prone to crimes, so we shouldn't be going to that. So this socio-cultural mindset of people needs to be changed by awareness kind of programs. Okay. Now next point is roping in the participation of private sector. So private sector participation is important to improve the research and development, to improve the investment, and also to get close to the public. See, government can't take big steps like ICT solutions in a sole manner, because government is having limitation in terms of resources and in terms of reach. So what the government can do is rope in the participation of private sector in this field. Then we are moving on to the conclusion. A good conclusion would be, being in the transition stage from paper mode to digital mode. So India is still in this transition level. Paperwork is slowly being converted into digital mode. So what is the demand of an Indian society? Indian society needs to progressively move. The move from this paper mode to digital mode should be constructive, trusted, and progressive. So this way India has to integrate the ICT with their lives and services. So this is the conclusion for this answer.